to our channel. We are Duke's Garage. We are talking tools and into fixing cars. Make sure that you subscribe, cause all the stars you'll see. If you've got a project, this is where you want to be. Duke's Garage. Welcome to Duke's Garage. Yeah, we're talking cars.
Welcome to Duke's Garage. On this episode, we're going to start restoration on this 1999 BMW 328i. Now, we're fast forwarded into the future. As you can kind of see, I've already done some work here. I got the hood off, the engine's all in place, but I've been working on this car for quite a little while now. It actually sat for even longer in the garage. The car, unfortunately, was overheated by myself. And it wasn't overheated very long, but it was overheated. And if you know anything about these E46 M52 motors, I think M54 as well, but definitely the M52 motors that are in these cars, overheating is a cardinal sin. And usually if you overheat your car, it just depends on the severity of it, but chances are you're going to blow the head gasket at the minimum. So it's not a matter of whether the gasket's going to go, if or if not it's going to go. It's just a matter of when it's going to go. My car was overheated to the point where not only did the gasket go, but the cylinder head cracked. So it pretty much was down for the count. And the motor is a boat anchor. Let me show you the motor sitting over here. Yeah, it's a goner. So with these cars, you can go ahead and try to replace the head gasket, and if in my case I had to put a whole nother head on it. But even then, with these all aluminum motors, when you go to try to torque down the head bolts, you'll probably spinning out the threads. The threads will give up; they won't hold. It just the overheating weakens the block, and it's a real mess. Now you can get kits installed to renew the threads. Can't think of the name of the one that's really popular, but I've heard varying degrees of success with that. So these motors are pretty plentiful right now in the salvage yards. So I decided to kind of roll the dice. I did some kind of crazy stuff. I took a gamble. Now it was a calculated gamble, but I got a car out of a salvage car. It did have a warranty, but man, it took me so long to even get around to putting the motor in the car. I'm sure they wouldn't want this motor back, but I did some work to the motor prior to putting it into the car and testing it. Now, I highly recommend that if you get a salvage motor, one, I'm about to show you the things I did to kind of hedge my bets that I got a good motor, but you really want to bring it home, put it in the car, test it, and then if you want to make upgrades, then you can go ahead and do it, because at least you know you have a good motor. But I had the motor out, and for your entertainment purposes, I decided to just see, hey, this is either going to work or not work, and you'll get to kind of have a chance to watch me take a swing at it. So we bought this car years ago. You can see last inspection was 2012, so it's been 10 years right there. This car, it has been sitting, which I don't think the car liked. Really don't think the car liked it at all, sitting for that long. But we bought the car, cash car, $5,000. I think we bought it around, I think it was around 2008 maybe. Yeah, around 2008. I think we purchased this vehicle, yep. I think we're the second owner of the car, so yep. It gave us a good bit of life and service there. I did some minor, not really minor, but mostly minor routine maintenance on it along the way. The typical stuff, gaskets and of course brakes and all that kind of stuff. But and some of the common problems it had, I kind of refreshed the cooling system along the way, but. Yeah, it gave up on me after a while too, and instead of taking care of it right away, I kind of played around and I started swapping out individual parts in the cooling system. And what I learned is if you find one bad item in these cooling systems, you probably should just go ahead and replace everything. I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. Now, what'll happen is if you start swapping out maybe one or two things, you know, you might replace a hose that's leaking, or you might have a bad thermostat, maybe the expansion tank is leaking. Usually what happens behind that is something else will go pretty quickly after that. What I've been told is that the expansion tank is actually a built-in and engineered weak point that is supposed to go if there's any kind of blockage or backup in the radiator, and it's kind of designed that way so you don't destroy the motor. So the expansion tank will be the first one to start leaking on you, and you'll notice it right away, and that's definitely a sign to get your car checked out or get to swapping parts out. So I will never make that mistake again. I'm going to keep my cooling system tip top, and if I have any issues, I will go ahead and just do a full swap on everything instead of chancing cooking my motor again. You'll see along the way in these videos, I replaced everything. All the hoses, radiator, expansion tank, thermostats, the fan shroud, I mean, every single thing. So it's been totally redone. I'm going to take you back in time to 2018. Yes, 2018, when I first went out to the salvage yard and found this motor. And then I'll start bringing you back forward to the current day, to where we are now. So please enjoy this first episode, and hopefully you'll learn some things along the way. I will say that I'm not going through every single step like I tend to do. I'm just kind of giving you the highlights and showing you kind of some of the process. There are times where I might get into some of the details, but for the most part, I'm kind of keeping it on the top level, so you get a good idea of what would be involved if you wanted to restore any car, really, but in particular these BMW E46s, which are very, very popular, well supported, very strong owner base that all help each other. So there's a lot of help out there if you need it. But I'm finally getting done with this 99 E46, and I do plan to put it on the road as a daily driver. So let's hope this motor works out. This is our candidate for the motor. Preferably, I'm always looking for one that has an accident hit. So the thought is that this car was running up until the point of the accident, and for a car of this age, it's a 2000 328i, pretty much any insurance company is going to write it off and call it a total loss. So this might be a good candidate to try for that motor. It's got a sport wheel on it. It's also nice. Yeah, 2000 BMW. And we'll go around the other side, look at it. Okay, it is a 328i. Same size motor as our project car. Looks like it was pretty well maintained until the accident. Seats and everything look really in good shape. This car was complete my first time looking at it, and within a couple of days it's already been kind of gone through. But we're going to pull this motor and take this long block. We don't need any accessories, we're just going to take the long block. So tomorrow morning it is. We're out here pulling the motor. I just pulled off the front bumper, the whole front clip there. So I just want to clear all this garbage. This is the condenser for the AC, and I'm going to pull that out the way as well and just open this whole thing up. Then I'll start to strip off intake manifold and some of the accessories. I'm just buying the long blocks. I'm not taking all the accessories with me, but just want to clear the whole area out real nice. Then I'll get under the car and unhook the bolt to the flywheel. We'll loosen up the motor mounts. There's two mounts here. There's one down there. There's one on this side as well. And then we'll go ahead and lift her out of here and get it on out down the road. And we're back at the salvage yard. It's 8 a.m.
couldn't get the motor out yesterday. I was short one tool, which is a cardinal sim. You come here, you gotta make sure you have everything you need. So I left the engine hoist on the motor. Getting that hoist was a pain in the neck yesterday. So I had to get here first thing. I was first guy in line, and I want to make sure that that hoist is still back on that car so I can get this thing out of here this morning. Boy, it was a long walk too. I had to walk that hoist on this side. This is the late model cars, all the way down to down there where that blue building is. That's the entrance area. Push that hoist all the way up here, and now I'm going to the car. This car is in the almost the furthest point from the front entrance as you can get. So I think this was easily a half mile or more of walking or pushing that engine hoist through some pretty bumpy road here. So needless to say, I have a lot invested in this motor. So let's pray we can get this thing out of here today, and the thing is a good motor. The trek continues. I got to go all the way down by that white fence, hang a left, and then head over to that corner, and that's where the car is sitting. So it was a good place to stash away the engine hoist. I'm hoping I'll peek over there and still see it in place. Can't tell right now, but we're almost there. And the hoist is still in place. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's just walk it on down. So this thing is in the last row, hidden in the far corner. I got my tools on a cart I'm gonna use to pull this motor out of here, roll it out of here on. So here it is, and she's just about there. She's hanging up down there on the exhaust. I'm taking the exhaust manifold, the transmission, I'm taking it all out, because to get to those transmission bolts, it's a real pain in the butt. And laying out here in this nasty ground, I would rather take them out on top of this than on the ground back there, busting up my knuckles. So hopefully I will be able to get the last few pieces off of this thing, and then we can go ahead and give birth to this baby. All right, a little further along. How you doing? You wait for this? Yeah, okay. All right, a little further along now, and I went ahead and just dropped out the front suspension because I have this thing really rigged up on some seat belt straps. You know, it's not really safe, so I wanted to make it so I didn't have to lift the engine butt so high. So I just dropped out the whole front suspension, just the 3 bolts at the top of each strut. You got 4 bolts for the cross member. You had a couple links there, a couple connections there for the sway bar. You had to drop those off. Whole thing dropped out, get it out the way, 15 minutes. Yeah, I took the hood off yesterday, and I got the front wheels out of the way just to clear it all out so I can really see what I'm doing. So I looked underneath the vehicle, everything looks pretty clear, and whenever you're pulling an engine, especially one that wants to fight you, I pretty much am doing the pull and cut method. So there's some wires from the harness that are hanging around, and instead of trying to figure out exactly where they're hooked up at, I'm just cutting the lines, because this car is pretty much, once the motor's gone, it's going to probably just go into this pile of wrecks. So yeah, I try not to destroy parts when I'm pulling things off, because I always think about the guy who's coming behind me. But with this motor deal, yeah, it's just you know, you got this thing sitting up on a couple metal stands, and got this kind of ancient, somebody welded up engine hoist, which is great that they have this. So I do really appreciate that the yard has these available for us, but I'm just pulling this thing out as quick as I can and getting it on the ground so I can deal with it. All right, and the baby is born. We got her out of there. So I think I was smart to snatch the whole drivetrain. There's some bolts on the back side of these guys that are tough to get to when you're doing this job. If you're trying to take just the transmission out, like you say in your driveway or whatever, you don't have a lift. These ones up top are kind of hard. You gotta run a long extension up through here you also have to drop the transmission down some to even get to them. So, you know, it was just way easier to work with everything out here. So, took a little fighting, but we got her out. I probably could have done it a little quicker, but I was just kind of had a crazy day yesterday. I was running around a lot, so I didn't have the hours to really give it, to kind of take my time and just work through it methodically. So fortunately I was able to get back here this morning. No one had taken my engine, no one had taken this hoist, and now we can break this thing down. I just want the long block. I don't need any of the accessories. I already have all that, so they're going to charge me for them anyway. So I'm going to try to just strip it down to the long block and get the heck up out of here. But this is a good salvage yard here. I mean, this is a massive yard. I mean, there's cars for days. This is the early model side, and then way down there, right by that blue building way off yonder, there's a late model side that goes on this side and all the way down. So tons of cars. This particular company has 3 locations around the city of Houston, and I've always had really good luck here. It's really helped me tremendously with the cars that I work on. Saved a lot of money and hassle. You can get little intricate pieces that you just can't buy at the dealer unless you buy a complete unit. So it's nice you can just come out here, and also it's a great way to learn you know, how to get things apart. During my dealership time at when I worked on Saabs, what the guy had me do was break down some junk cars, and I learned how to strip them down, and it made me so much faster when it came time to do jobs for customers. So going through the job, I know it kind of sucks to have to do the job twice, because I could have had an engine delivered to my door and did the job once, but I get to kind of figure out what tools, what things I got to look out for, where all the wires are at, and how they're supposed to look when they go back. And you know, it just makes you so much faster having done the job more than one time. Well, goodbye, my friend. Thank you for the donation. This car is actually a 5-speed transmission. I know a lot of people like to do 5-speed swaps, but this is going to be going to an automatic vehicle. So it's a lot of goodies out here for some fellow BMW enthusiasts. Here's our cart, tool bag, long block stripped down here, and we're going to go march up to pay for this motor. When you don't have a truck and you gotta make do, I slid this sucker right on in the back of this car. So, gangster, or maybe ghetto, we got it back to the house. We have the motor, just have it over here by the grass, and we're giving it a quick wash down, clean, kind of a bath here. First round was this purple degreaser, which worked really well, but we got some pretty tough grease, and something I've been watching a lot on YouTube is people trying this cheap, this is Walmart brand here, oven cleaner. So you spray this on, leave it for about 5 minutes, maybe 10 tops. Don't want it to dry though, for sure, but I like the results I was seeing they were getting. So I'm going to hose it down now with some of this after I blow off some of this water I left behind from my first pass, and let's see if we can get her cleaned up, and then I'll bring her back in and put her on the engine stand. We have the engine rotated. I just pulled all the screws that are right here. I'm going to change the oil pan gasket. It's somewhat of a tricky job to do on the vehicle. I believe with this vehicle you have to have the engine supported from the top to allow you to get the oil pan free. Might be confusing this with the E36 body car, but as I recall with the E46, I think you have to have the same thing. You have to support the motor from the top in order to release the oil pan, because you have to disconnect some things for the I think some of the motor mounts or something of that nature. But anyway, so we have the pan here. I'm going to clean it out real nice. It looks completely normal in here. That's a good sign. No moisture, just oil. So I'm happy to see that. Everything down here looks pretty much what I would expect. So I'm feeling good about the condition of this motor thus far. So let's get this pan cleaned up and keep moving along. This is my first pass on the oil pan, just using some of the super clean. So it's better, but there's some baked on stuff here. So what better time than the present to try some of that oven cleaner. I'm gonna pull that guy out. So we're gonna spray a liberal amount of this stuff. It worked incredible on the motor, on the exterior of the motor. So I'm gonna try it on the inside of this pan, see if we can get some of this baked off stuff off the pan. We'll see if we can get some of this baked off stuff off the pan. So we're going to use this Scotch pad just to wipe down the mating surface. Just nice and easy wipe down to get all the old gasket material out of here. I'm using a Scotch pad that's been used previously. It's kind of been broken in some. A brand new pad can sometimes be a little aggressive, and I don't really want to put any scratches on this, obviously. So I like ones I've kind of used a little bit that are not quite, you know, brand new. And just go around all the mating surfaces, make sure you get all the gasket material out of there, and make sure she's good and clean. So I like this. I'll probably come back behind it with a paper towel, like a shop towel, and some carburetor cleaner, and just clean any oil or residues off of there from the Scotch pad, and should be good to go for the pan to go back on. Here is the oil pan after an hour of treatment with the oven cleaner. It's pretty remarkable how clean that came out. I'm very impressed. So there's a couple spots that are a little hard to get to. Like there's some spots there, but those I can work those by hand. I mean, those are just a few little spots there. Not a biggie, but overall, I mean, this thing is just massively much more cleaner than what it once was. So, I mean, I could not be more impressed with how that cheap oven cleaner just ate up that caked on stuff, which is what it's supposed to do. But you know, it is a less than $3 can of cleaner that's worked better than many of the engine degreasers I've used. So yeah, I mean, I could take a little brass brush there and work it. I bet if I was just to spray it and let it sit for another hour or so, it'll probably take that stuff off too. But I don't want to push it too hard, so I'll just use probably some carb cleaner and a brass brush and just clean off the rest of that little goop. But yeah, I'm totally pleased with how this oven cleaner worked. We have the engine on the engine stand here, and I just cleaned down the underside of the motor, just a little rag and some carburetor cleaner, and just kind of wiped around and got some of the you know, surface oil that was kind of got a little crusty there. Wiped it all off, so it's looking decent. I'm happy with it. But the real star of the show is this oil pan. So man, did this thing come out nice. Take this new oil pan gasket by Molly, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Molly, and layer in place here. Oops. There we go. They're all lined up on the holes. Alright, looking good. And the nice thing about having the motor on an engine stand is you're able to rotate the motor, so the bottom is down here and the top up here, obviously, and you can work, you know, in any position that you're most comfortable. So that makes it real nice. So we're gonna go ahead and lay the oil pan on top of here. I also tapped all these screws, all these screw points, just to make sure that they were nice and clean. Sometimes dirt and whatnot gets into these holes, so I use a little tap. I think these are M6 bolts, M6 1.0 bolts. So I tapped out all the holes so the screws will go down and fully seat properly. So that's a good piece of advice I'm giving you there, is just if you're working on your motor and you're doing a little bit of rebuild, it's always good to tap your holes out, make sure you get any dirt or grime or anything that might be in there that could cause the bolts not to screw down as tight as possible or fully seat. So got those all tapped out, so now we're going to go ahead and drop the pan on and tighten it up. The oil pan is now buttoned up. Got all of our bolts torqued down. I just want to share with you, this is the M6 1.0 tap. If you do decide to tap out your oil pan bolt threads, I strongly encourage you to start your tap by hand. Make sure it's started down by hand, and it's kind of got it going some, and then you can go ahead and screw it on down in there. But if you try to say put it on like a power drill, like say a cordless drill, or you just want to just start cranking on it, you could actually set the threading like on an angle. You know what I'm saying? So you want it to be straight on down, horizontal. Vertical. Excuse me. And so just to ensure that you got it going in the right direction, I always screw my tap down by hand first, and then I'll go ahead and drive it down in there. So just a little heads up on that. But this is all buttoned up with the new gasket, so now it's time to flip it over and take a look at it from the top side. Here is the motor post cleaning with the oven cleaner. Came out absolutely amazing. Take it around the other side here. I mean, it just really came out wonderfully. I got some little spots in there I want to touch up, just to get them. Just went through the trouble of cleaning it so nice, to make sure we get all the dirt out of there and make it pretty. And I'll clean up the surfaces here for the intake manifold whenever I'm ready to put that back in. So I've loosened up the valve cover, a series of bolts here that had to pull out. Now in the center there's also some bolts. With these, you zoom in, you have some 8mm bolts that sit on top. Like in this case, it's holding ground wires for the coil pack. Same thing here. So you have to pull these 8mm bolts off first. Below that's a 10mm. So you have one here. Oh, here's a 10mm here that's not with a any kind of connection to it. So you have the one here, one there, one here, and then one there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts on the top you have to remove, as well as the ones around the perimeter. And let me back the camera back up. The ones around the perimeter as well. Then this will pop right off, and we can take a look inside. Now we have the valve cover off, and it's looking nice in here. Everything's looking well oiled and happy. Pretty much par for the course. Even this little black cover here, it does tend to hold a little. Every engine I've pulled a valve cover off, every BMW engine I've pulled a valve cover off, usually has a little something on this black cover. So I'm not too concerned about that. I'm going to probably swap over the Vanos. This is the Vanos variable valve timing setup on this vehicle. I may swap over the Vanos from the motor, the original motor from this car, because I did a rebuild on the Vanos. A company called Bijan. I'll put it up on the screen. They sell a Vanos upgrade kit that comes with better seals and components that prevent lag whenever you smash on the gas. When these Vanos seals start to get worn out, or the Vanos is starting to kind of get a little worn, when you hit the gas you may have a moment of hesitation before the car takes off. So that's an indicator that your Vanos needs to have its seals replaced. If you take your car to a dealership, they're going to just want to sell you the entire Vanos setup, and as you can imagine, it's quite expensive. But Bijan does an excellent job. They give you all the instructions on their website, provide you with the seals and everything, and you can go in here, rebuild this Vanos, and it'll operate perfectly. So I had that problem with this the vehicle that we're going to be rebuilding here, and I put the Bijan setup in there, and problems gone away. The car shifted and moved perfectly. So I may just go ahead and swap. The repair I did on my on the other motor's Vano setup is not that old. It doesn't have too many miles on it, but I may go ahead and buy another Bijan kit and just do a video on the steps involved with rebuilding this, because I think it might be beneficial to somebody out there. So next up we have the oil filter housing. I've already pulled the oil filter housing. I'm going to show you the gasket here. I have some rags stuffed in the hole just to protect it from keeping anything going in there by accident. But this is the gasket, the old gasket off the oil filter housing. Purchased a new gasket. Depending on which brand you like to go with, it can be as little as $3, as much as say $6 or $7. I tend to lean towards the Molly brand or Phoebe. There are some other brands that are pretty common with BMW vehicles. So this is a $7 one, but needless to say, it's a cheap gasket. But the trouble this can cause for you, if anyone's ever had this happen to them, this is kind of a common issue with BMWs. I've had this car here on the motor that's in there, this gasket went out on it. I had a 5 Series at one time and the same issue happened. When this gasket fails, oil will start to leak all down the side of your motor. Obviously a huge mess. It attracts a lot of dust and gunk and grime, so it's a real pain in the butt. So obviously, while I had the motor out of the vehicle, even though it isn't that hard to do inside the vehicle, but extra easy to do outside the vehicle, while I have it out, I'll go ahead and put this little $7 gasket in there and save myself a whole lot of future headache for a long while. So the oil filter housing, I hit it with some oven cleaner. It's down here on the floor. So just clean up the back side of the filter. I have the entryway stuffed with some rags, but the gasket lives right here in this area, and it bolts around to the vehicle. One thing I recommend you do is, keep up with the position of your bolts. Don't just pull them out and then you'll forget where they go. What I did was I got a piece of cardboard and I put the bolts in their correct orientation, because with BMWs in particular, you'll find that there's 4 different size bolts for one part. So just to make sure you put everything back the way you found it, I always make sure I draw a diagram or something just to orient the bolts where they belong. So have the bolts lined up. I'm letting the oven cleaner soak on the back side of that oil filter housing just to get it cleaned up. And as soon as it's sat for a little while, I'll spray it down with a hose and then dry it out real good and then reattach it to the vehicle. So this is definitely something you want to do if you're purchasing a new BMW, or if you are going to be doing an engine swap like I'm doing. Make sure you replace this gasket. I don't care if the person you bought it from told you they did it 2 days ago. For $3 to $7, do it again just to save you the headache. In the back of the car is where I piled up all the parts when I was disassembling everything. So a lot of pieces are all stacked up here. I pulled out the intake manifold, set it down here in the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and clean these fuel injectors. I covered the process of cleaning this cheap do-it-yourself way that I learned on YouTube, and I'll give you the link to the video that I used to learn this. But it's a way you can clean your injectors without having an expensive equipment. I've already pulled this first injector out of the intake. Before we move over to that injector, I want to show you some stuff. So down here, crankcase ventilation. This little part, which is really buried underneath of the intake manifold. This little part is buried underneath the intake manifold. Tricky to get to whenever it's in the car. Pretty much have to pull the intake off of the car, which is a real pain in the butt. So this is a part we're going to definitely put on order and replace. About $120 online, and it can cause all kinds of havoc whenever they start to fail, making noising, hissing, bad idle. What else? Whole list of things. So we're going to get that replaced. I know I have never done this job on this vehicle, so definitely time to do it. It comes with it's in a kit, and it comes with all these hoses here that are all part of this whole crankcase deal. And I need to also take a look over here. Let me flip this over. These vacuum lines go into, I think it's a check valve of some sort. I'll have to look up on the schematics and see. But like this guy here is broken. This is so dry rotted, it's going to break at any minute. So we'll need to replace these hoses. Then there's a section of kind of hard plastic breather tube that broke whenever I just moved it an inch and it snapped. So we'll need to replace all that as well. But we're ready to get back to cleaning these injectors out. So the injector's pulled. I have it over here on the bench. I'll go through real quick what I did to set this up. What I have here is a section of, I guess, a basic gas line or vacuum line hooked into a smaller little vacuum line, and then into a yet smaller one, and then eventually it comes down to where you could put the little spray thing off of the carb cleaner into it. There's actually a kit of these vacuum lines you can buy in various sizes, and I'll give you a link to that. And those sizes, all of them fit within each other real nicely, and then connect to the little tube. I use a piece of shrink wrap to really seal it up. On this side, I just put the top of the injector into the hose and clamped it off. Then at the salvage yard, when I was there, I cut off one of the injector connections and soldered up some extra wire to it. Have a battery here. Have the negative one already connected. So what you're going to do is you're going to shoot this carburetor cleaner down in there. It's going to build up pressure. And what it'll allow you to do, let me kind of prop this up. You can see what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this battery post. You don't want to hold it on there. You just want to give it quick taps, just like the way these injectors get fed power from the vehicle. But you can tap it and it'll run this carb cleaner through the injector and get them good and clean. This saved me with a little trouble I had with a job I did on a Mercedes C300. I accidentally got the injector tips dirty whenever I was doing an intake manifold job on it, and I had to, think, quickly to figure out what I could do because the car was misfiring. Looked up on YouTube, a guy showed a low-cost way to clean your injectors, and it worked. So replaced the injectors in the C300, and the car running great. So actually running better than what it was, so it probably needed the cleaning. But yeah, you can just tapping it, and you can just, as it runs through, you can hit the can and then build pressure back up and let it run. So I'm going to do that for all 6 of the injectors. I've ordered a set of new injector seals. The seals are definitely worn. I also cleaned out the exterior of the injector. There was some gunk on around the tip here. So we'll replace these seals, put them back into the intake manifold. I'll show you that whenever I get the seals in the mail.
That'll do it for this episode of Duke's Garage. On the next episode, we'll be pulling out the old motor, aka the boat anchor. We'll also be cleaning up the engine bay and addressing that. And finally, we'll get back to wrenching on the salvage motor. I hope you'll join us in the next episode. It's going to be posted very soon. Again, thank you for watching.